5 on a Saturday morning. Really appreciate that. Despite the title of the session, there will be no PED testing later today, which is a great relief to the table up front. As Morgan said, as listening to everything that we've heard the last few days, this kind of combines a lot of the principles discussed in a way that even a small company can deploy them. We talked about the relevancy, the personalization, using data, the right message to the right person at the right time. I'm going to talk a lot about those ideas and how we put them into practice. And a lot of this is going to be some of the nitty-gritty details of, here, this is exactly what we did, and here are the results that we saw from it. As Morgan mentioned, I'm at PaperStyle. I started my career in brand management at Procter & Gamble, and then applied that classical marketing training to a range of industries. Before joining PaperStyle, about 18 months ago, when the family ownership wanted to be more aggressive in growing their business, and one of that was through email. As Morgan said, it's invitations and announcements, but what we really sell on is emotion. When you're picking out that bridal shower invitation for your friend, or that first birthday party invitation, you want to leave the right impression. Our shoppers believe the invitation is a reflection of who they are. Now, the women in the room are nodding. The guys have no idea what I'm talking about. But it's true, and it's really an emotional purchase. And I wanted to share with you a quote from a customer. We get about 30 reviews a day that are in this vein. They're all very, very positive. But the reason I wanted to share this with you is we see some of the emotion and the personalization that's in here. And our email efforts were nothing if impersonal. We were, and still do quite a bit, do the email blasts. And strategically, if you're going to be involved in an emotional decision, a personal product, it doesn't make that much sense to be so impersonal with your email. So strategically it makes sense to migrate in that direction. So we'll talk about behavioral marketing and top line some of the definitions to make sure we're all on the same page, and then really dive deep into the PaperStyle case study. But before we do, I wanted to share with you one of my first email marketing lessons that actually is connected to the topic today. Back in 2005, I was a senior VP for Park and Fly. That's the off-airport parking folks. And we had built a prepaid parking reservation engine. And we're all very excited about this, and we were getting some great inroads and getting prepaid reservations for parking, which nobody thought we could. And I secured a deal with Hotwire. This is a very exciting deal. All it was a rev share based on people who would book reservations from Hotwire. And Hotwire told me, David, we're going to put you on our email blast. In fact, it's going to be in the bottom, but we can see about a lot of people. I said, well, how many people will see this email? Well, this email is going to 5 million travelers. Holy cow, 5 million? My heart beat a little faster. I contacted IT and the folks who hosted our reservation engine. Can we handle it? Do we need to add server capacity? Well, the email went out. We all stood by. We got 3 reservations. 5 million and then 3. Well, why was that? Well, first of all, the placement wasn't great. It was on the bottom. But here was an email about the daily deals for hotels and flying. Who's going to buy airport parking when they haven't booked a trip yet? And so, again, probably the most irrelevant time to offer airport parking. And we learned later the best place to be on emails was on that pre-departure email that Delta or AirTran was sending out. And that made a lot of sense, and that's where we migrated to. So, behavioral marketing. Basically, it's triggering emails off an individual's behavior. And the example that is the most simplest simplistic one is the welcome email. The behavior, register online. Triggers and email says welcome to PaperStyle. The reason we really need to focus on behavioral marketing beyond the reason we've talked about is all the clutter, all the messaging that's out there, both offline, such as mail, but all the social media that we've talked about. We've all seen the huge numbers on Twitter and the huge numbers of engagement on Facebook. There's a lot of distraction out there. Pinterest is now very relevant to a lot of people, but that becomes something that you have to either use or fight through. If you have an 11-year-old daughter like I do, you know that texting can be quite a distraction, and she, I think, has done 87 texts in a day herself. But again, something else that we need to break through. Fortunately, email marketing is one of the most effective and efficient ways to do that. Moving to marketing automation. We work with an agency called We're Aware. They have a slew of clients, and they do the mass email blast for clients as well as the targeted emails, the automated emails. And they took a look at all their clients, and they aggregated the results to kind of reinforce the value of targeted emails. What they found, as you would not be surprised, that open rates in aggregate were significantly higher, click-through rates, again, even higher. The time spent on the site, for those who make it to the site through the email, much higher. As you would expect, bounce rate, lower. The revenue per campaign, up, very meaningful number, driven by the conversion on steroids that happens when you target based on behavior, which again translates to revenue per person visiting the site, a lot more than you'd see for the email blast. So for PaperStyle, as a means of example, let me ask a question or two. Of folks in the room, how many have a son or daughter graduating from something? Kindergarten, elementary school, high school, college. And okay, we got maybe 10%. Well, I have an email blast going out at 4 o'clock today, and you would find it very relevant. The rest of you will press the delete button. I have another email going on Tuesday. I'd ask how many know somebody who's pregnant, has a spouse that's pregnant, or maybe they're pregnant themselves. Anybody? Okay, great, maybe about 20%. So the email blast going on Tuesday will be great for maybe 20%, but the rest, really not relevant. And that's, again, the challenge we have that we need to get away from. So when we started back a little less than a year ago, here's where the data comes from. We did a lot of digging into the data that we had to categorize our shoppers, categorize the behavior in terms of what sold, what categories and subcategories tied together. And we came about 10 different categories of products that we sold. And then we needed to identify those behaviors that tied to those categories. And sometimes there was some offline behaviors as well we had to be aware of, which I'll explain in a minute. And then prioritize where we wanted to go, where we get the greatest bang for the buck before getting to the nitty-gritty and mapping out the campaigns themselves. Again, we were a small company. We didn't have the opportunity to invest in a lot of resources. Google Analytics worked great for us. And then for some data that we did not have, we went ahead and used email itself to collect some additional data. The category we went after was brides and or brides' friends. This serves the flow charts, and I'm not expecting that you're noting all of this down, but is a simplified version of what the real mapping looks like. We cut out some things because it would have been overwhelming, and we're going to walk through a couple of these trees and not go off all the branches that exist but you don't see here. So the first thing the behavior we detect is, have they clicked on the wedding tab on our website, or perhaps the wedding tab in our email? If they have, we send them an email to try to figure out which tree they're going to flow down. Are you planning for your wedding or your friend's wedding? So if it's your wedding, the first thing we're going to do is assume it's about 3 months out from your wedding. We know that, and that's a fairly good estimate, is that we have a lot of our customers call our customer service, which we call Paper Stylus, for help and advice. Could be wording, could be picking out an invitation. And we understand that we're hearing from customers about 3 months before their wedding. So the first thing we'll do is we're going to offer up the range of wedding invitations that we offer, whether it be beach wedding or elegant wedding, and we're going to invite them to check out our offerings. About 6 weeks later, as we get closer to the wedding, about the time that they need to think about some wedding favors for their guests. So we'll send them an email highlighting the wedding favors. I didn't even know we had wedding favors about 3 months after I was with the company. But they're going to know we have wedding favors about 6 weeks or 7 weeks before the wedding. About 3 weeks later, as we're getting closer, we want to remind them to get gifts for their bridal party. So we'll offer gifts for the bridesmaids, groomsmen, and then it continues. Just about 7 days later, a couple weeks now before the wedding, you're going to get all these gifts. Don't forget the thank you cards. So we'll have reminder to get thank you notes. So here we've identified them 3 months before their wedding and have a series of emails. Sometimes it's a week apart, sometimes it's 6 weeks apart, depending on what the right timing is to really get that right time, the right place, the right person. Now, if it's not your wedding, and we determine it's your friend's wedding, we're thinking it's about 6 weeks out from your friend's wedding. And so we're going to show you a bunch of bridal shower invitations. Could be stock the bar shower, could be around the clock, around the house shower, but we'll promote that to you. And then after you've ordered, or even if you haven't ordered, maybe you've ordered somewhere else, but we're thinking it's about a week or so later, when you start shopping, we'll share with you our bridal shower tableware offerings. Now, if you're a really good friend, you're going to host a bachelorette party as well. So as we get closer to the wedding, the bachelorette invitations will be offered up, followed by bachelorette tableware. Now, if during any of this you have skipped ahead and you've bought something further down the chain, we'll skip ahead with you. And we'll say, okay, well, you're over here now. We will jump right to the bridal shower tableware and skip over the bachelorette tableware and skip over the bridal shower tableware. And finally, if you're a really good friend, you're not going to want to forget the gifts. So we will offer up a series of possible wedding gifts just within a couple weeks of the wedding. There's one thing that's missing from all these emails that's typical of an e-tailer. Any idea what's missing? E-tail email blasts? What's missing from all these? There's not one promotion. There's not one discount. There's not one free in the subject line. There's not one 20% off. There's not one deal here. All of our emails that we do in bulk, not all, but I'd say 80%, have a high promotional offer. Because we're so targeted, the results are dramatic. Open rate over triple what we're used to seeing in our bulk mailing. Conversion, click rate, over double. Our revenue per mailing, almost over 4 times what we typically see. This again, without any discounts or promotion. So, again, we're a very small company that when we use Silverpop as our platform, and with the support of We're Aware as an agency, again, it's all very reasonable. We can do everything that not everything, but take the same type of path that Amazon's or CareerBuilder or American Airlines have taken, and not miss out on all the trends and all the opportunity that you've heard all week. So again, while it's work that can be achieved despite the size of your staff, as long as you have some resources available, either on-site or to get some off-site help. It's getting the data, prioritizing with that data, and if it's not B2C, if it's B2B or B2B2C, we can do the same thing, that the measurements are a little bit different. Meaning instead of tracking revenue, you're worried about something like leads. But you can do the same thing. I've asked Bill Haskett, who is with We're Aware, who's done a lot of this work on our behalf, to join me here at the conference for this morning. Bill's here, so if you have any questions for me or for Bill, we'd be happy to take them.
So question for you, David. We talk about behavioral marketing. Can you, and just kind of how the response rates are so much higher than kind of the baseline. Can you give an idea of, one, who is it that you're targeting? Is it only people who've already purchased at least once? And then what are we talking about in terms of percentages of your overall either customer or prospect list?
The behavior is not necessarily purchase. In fact, in most cases, it's not purchase that's triggered it. It's just behavior on the site or within an email. A lot of people will register with us for potentially a coupon offer down the road, or if they're playing around with an invitation and need to save it, they have to register to save the invitation. So much of the data we're getting is for people who have just visited the site, clicked on wedding, or even if they get an email from us, clicked on the wedding tab within the email, that triggers all the activity that you see here. As a percentage of the database, it's a relatively small percent of the database, but a disproportional impact on revenue. Question back there, Morgan?
So to clarify, in the beginning, I think you mentioned you used Google Analytics for your behavioral, to get the behavioral data from the site. Are you still using that, and how did you link that up to the email address itself? Was it through a registration, or how did you link the behavioral data to the email address using Google Analytics?
Well, the Google Analytics didn't link to the email address. Google Analytics was to understand the drivers of our business. How much of our business was wedding, how much of our business was the subcategories within wedding, and that allowed us to prioritize where we go after. For instance, after wedding, we went after baby shower, baby announcements, and then we did birthday, and broke out birthday between first birthday, sweet 16, and milestone birthday. So that essentially was before, and then we track within, we track the behavior of the results with marrying the email address with the revenue that comes in through Google Analytics, and it's through tagging that we do that, and that allows us to keep track of it that way. Bill, can I add to that?
Yeah, the Silverpop tool that we use has web tracking capabilities. So we put on David's site a little snippet of code similar to Google Analytics tracking first-party cookies. Consequently, anyone that we have identified in the database ends up getting tracked. So we can determine which pages they visited and when they last visited them. And that's the tracking stuff that we're triggering some of these emails off of. So the logic in the system looks at, did I open a wedding email? Have I made a wedding purchase? Or have I visited the wedding invitation page on the site? So all of that data gets stored in the SilverPop database.
Anything else? Questions? Yep. Bob?
Hold on, Bob.
How many of these types of programs do you have running at the same time? And from a revenue standpoint, how much do they represent versus the bulk mailings that you do?
We currently have 3 automated campaigns, this being one, birthday being another, and baby being a third. Overall, these represent about 30% of our email revenue overall. And that's growing all the time because as more people that come to the site, we're accumulating more and more data, which allows these funnels to be bigger and bigger. You asked one other question in there. Was there something else you asked, Bob?
How does it compare from a volume standpoint as opposed to bulk?
Yeah, that's about, we're up 30% in terms of revenue, about 30%, a lot smaller in terms of the list. But we also are careful. The technology allows us not to, if somebody's getting an automated targeted email, they're not getting an email blast. So if they're getting the wedding invitation email, and that's priority, meaning if that's supposed to go out 1 week after they click on wedding, that goes, and then if the bulk mailing was going to go within a couple of days of that, bulk mail is kept from being sent to that person, so they're not being bombarded by what seems relevant versus irrelevant messages during the week. Anything else?
One more, here you go.
Andrew Harner from Libris.com. I was curious about collecting information through email. I've tried to collect basic stuff like birthday information, but people don't respond. Why do you think that's worked well for you?
Well, a lot of it is behavioral triggered and not data triggered by their birthday. And so if they've come to our site and clicked on birthday, it must be time for a birthday. And what we'll do first in that example is we'll try to figure out, is it kid's birthday? We'll send them an email. Are you shopping for kid's birthday, adult birthday, or sweet 16? And our response rate on that is very high. And again, I attribute that to the relevancy of the question. And so we get very high open and acknowledgement rates of that. And then from there, they enter the sweet 16 funnel or the first birthday funnel from there. Bill?
Yeah, there's a couple of other things that we do. If you get an email from somebody you don't know and they ask your birth date, there's no chance you're going to fill it out. If, however, I can develop a relationship with you by sending you targeted things that you continue to open, then at about email 4 or 5, it's appropriate for me to ask what your birth date is. So we use a technology called progressive forms, which starts with just a single field that I'm asking for. And then I can ask for additional fields as the relationship grows and you trust me more. So we build trust and then we send additional emails asking for more personalized information.
Bill and I will again be leading one of the roundtables, so for any other questions, we're happy to do it during that time.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, David. All right. So I'm going to ask our next set of panelists to come up, led by Alyssa from Neolane. We've got Jordan Cohen from Movable Ink, Paige from Verizon